Francis is about to enter the House chamber. It is packed, as you see, with members of Congress, senators, and other dignitaries. Tens of thousands of people are outside the Capitol watching on big TV screens right now. Nora O'Donnell is on Capitol Hill. Nora, good morning.
Good morning, and make no mistake, this is historic not only because this is the first pope ever to address Congress, but think about this. He will be on the tableau there, flanked by two Catholics, the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, as well as the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden. Almost a third of Congress is Catholic. There are 4 justices of the Supreme Court there, including 3 of the 6 Catholics who currently sit on the 9-member court. So you have an incredible show of Catholic force in one of the 3 major branches of government. And I think it's worth reflecting on that and the fact that And we're pausing now because we're going to hear the House Sergeant of Arms introduce and announce the Pope of the Holy See, Pope Francis, similar to what we hear on a State of the Union.
Mr. Speaker, the Pope of the Holy See.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you Pope Francis of the Holy See.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, honorable members of the Congress, dear friends, I am most grateful for your invitation to address this joint session of Congress in the land of the free at the home of the brave. I would like to think that the reason for this is that I too am a son of this great continent, from which we have all received so much, and toward which we share a common responsibility. Each son or daughter of a given country has a mission, a personal and social responsibility. Your own responsibility as members of Congress is to enable this country by your legislative activity to grow as a nation. You are the face of its people. They are representatives. You are called to defend and preserve the dignity of your fellow citizens in the tireless and demanding pursuit of the common good. For this is the chief aim of all politics. A political society endures when it seeks as a vocation to satisfy common needs by stimulating the growth of all its members, especially those in situations of greater vulnerability or risk. Legislative activity is always based on the care for the people. To this, you have been invited, called, and convened by those who elect you. Yours is a work which makes me reflect in two ways on the figure of Moses. On the one hand, the patriarch and lawgiver of the people of Israel symbolizes the need of people to keep alive their sense of unity by means of just legislation. On the other, the figure of Moses leads us directly to God and thus to the transcendent dignity of the human being. Moses provides us with a good synthesis of a work. You are asked to protect, by means of the law, the image and likeness fashioned by God on every human life. Today, I would like not only to address you, but through you, the entire people of the United States. Here, together with the representatives, I would like to take this opportunity to dialogue with the many thousands of men and women who strive each day to do a honest day's work, to bring home the daily bread, to save money, and one step at a time to build a better life for their families. These are men and women who are not concerned simply with paying their taxes, but in their own quiet way, sustain the life of society. They They generate solidarity by their actions, and they create organizations which offer a helping hand to those most in need. I would also like to enter into dialogue with the many elderly persons who are a storehouse of wisdom forged by experience and who seek in many ways, especially through voluntary work, to share their stories and their insights. I know that many of them are retired, but still active. They keep working to build up this land. I also want to dialogue with all those young people who are working to realize their great and noble aspirations, who are not led astray by facile proposals, and who face difficult situations, often as a result of immaturity on the part of many adults. I wish to dialogue with all of you, and I would like to do so through the historical memory of your people. My visit takes place at a time when men and women of goodwill are marking the anniversaries of several great Americans. The complexities of history and the reality of human weakness notwithstanding, these men and women, for all their many differences and limitations, were able, by hard work and self-sacrifice, some at the cost of their lives, to build a better future. They shaped fundamental values which endure forever in the spirit of the American people. A people with this spirit can live through many crises, tensions, and conflicts, while always finding the resources to move forward and to do so with dignity. These men and women offer us a way of seeing and interpreting reality. In honoring their memory, we are inspired even amid conflicts and in the here and now of each day to draw upon our deepest cultural reserve. I would like to mention 4 of these Americans: Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Dorothy Day, and Thomas Merton. This year marks the 150th anniversary of the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln, the guardian of liberty, who labored tirelessly that this nation under God might have a new birth of freedom. Building a future of freedom requires love of the common good and cooperation in a spirit of subsidiarity and solidarity. All of us are quite aware of and deeply worried by the disturbing social and political situation of the world today. Our world is increasingly a place of violent conflict, hatred, and brutal atrocities, committed even in the name of God and of religion. We know that no religion is immune from forms of individual delusion or ideological extremism. This means that we must be especially attentive to every type of fundamentalism, whether religious or of any other kind. A delicate balance is required to combat violence perpetrated in the name of a religion, an ideology, or an economic system, while also safeguarding religious freedom, intellectual freedom, and individual freedoms. But there is another temptation which we must especially guard against. The simplistic reductionism which sees only good or evil, or, if you will, the righteous and sinners. The contemporary world, with its open wounds, which affect so many of our brothers and sisters, demands that we confront every form of polarization, which would divide it into these two camps. We know that in the attempt to be feed of enemy without, we can be tempted to feed the enemy within, to imitate the hatred and violence of tyrants and murderers is the best way to take their place. That is something which you, as people, reject. Our response must instead be one of hope and healing, of peace and justice. We are asked to summon the courage and the intelligence to resolve today's many geopolitical and economic crises. Even in the developed world, the effects of unjust structures and actions are all too apparent. Our efforts must aim at restoring hope, righting wrongs, maintaining commitments, and thus promoting the well-being of individuals amongst peoples. We must move forward together as one in a renewed spirit of fraternity and solidarity, cooperating generously for the common good. The challenges facing us today call for a renewal of that spirit of cooperation which has accomplished so much good throughout the history of the United States. The complexity, the gravity, and the urgency of these challenges demand that we pool our resources and talents and resolve to support one another with respect for our differences and our convictions of conscience. In this land, the various religious denominations have greatly contributed to building and strengthening society. It is important that today, as in the past, the voice of faith continue to be heard, for it is a voice of fraternity and love, which tries to bring out the best in each person and in each society. Such cooperation is a powerful resource in the battle to eliminate new global forms of slavery, born of great injustices, which can be overcome only through new policies and new forms of social consensus. Politics is instead an expression of our compelling need to live as one in order to build as one the greatest common good, that of a community which sacrifices particular interest in order to share injustice and peace, its goods, its interests, its social life. I do not underestimate the difficulty that this involves, but I encourage you in this effort. Here too, I think of the march which Martin Luther King led from Selma to Montgomery 50 years ago as part of the campaign to fulfill his dream of full civil and political rights for African Americans. That dream continues to inspire us all, and I am happy that America continues to be, for many, a land of dreams. Dreams which lead to action, to participation, to commitment. Dreams which awaken what is deepest and truest in the life of the people. In recent centuries, millions of people came to this land to pursue the dream of building a future in freedom. We, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners because most of us were once foreigners. I say this to you as the son of immigrants, knowing that so many of you are also descendants from immigrants. Tragically, the rights of those who were here long before us were not always respected. For those peoples and their nations, from the heart of American democracy, I wish to reaffirm my highest esteem and appreciation. Those first contacts were often turbulent and violent, but we know that it's very difficult to judge the past by the criteria of the present. Nonetheless, when the stranger in our midst appeals to us, we must not repeat the sins and the errors of the past. We must resolve now to live as nobly and as justly as possible, as we educate new generations not to turn their back on our neighbors and everything around us. Building a nation calls us to recognize that we must constantly relate to others, rejecting a mindset of hostility in order to adopt one of reciprocal subsidiarity in a constant effort to do our best. I'm confident that we can do this. Our world is facing a refugee crisis of a magnitude known since the Second World War. This presents us with great challenges and many hard decisions. On this continent, too, thousands of persons are led to travel north in search of a better life for themselves and for their loved ones, in search of greater opportunity. It is not what we want for our own children. We must not be taken aback by the numbers, but rather view them as persons, seeing their faces and listening to their stories, trying to respond as best we can to their situation, to respond in a way which is always humane, just, and fraternal. We need to avoid a common temptation now awaits to discard whatever proves troublesome. Let us remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you do unto others as you will have them do unto you. This rule points us in a clear direction. Let us treat others with the same passion and compassion with which we want to be treated. Let us seek for others the same possibilities which we seek for ourselves. Let us help others to grow as we would like to be helped ourselves. In a word, if we want security, let us give security. If we want life, let us give life. If we want opportunities, let us provide these opportunities. The yardstick we use for others will be the yardstick which time uses for us. The Golden Rule also reminds us of our responsibility to protect and defend human life at every stage of its development. This conviction has led me from the beginning of my ministry to advocate at different levels the global abolition of the death penalty. I am convinced that this way is the best, since every life is sacred. Every human person is endowed with unalienable dignity, and society can only benefit from the rehabilitation of those convicted of crimes. Recently, my brother bishops here in the United States renewed the call for the abolition of the death penalty. Not only do I support them, but I also offer encouragement to all those who are convinced that a just and necessary punishment must never exclude the dimension of hope and the goal of rehabilitation. In these times, when social concerns are so important, I cannot fail to mention the servant of God, Dorothy Day, who founded the Catholic Worker Movement. Her social activism, her passion for justice and for the cause of the oppressed were inspired by the gospel, her faith, and the example of the saints. How much progress has been made in this area in so many parts of the world? How much has been done in these first years of the third millennium to raise people out of extreme poverty? I know that you share my conviction that much more still needs to be done, and in times of crisis and economic hardship, a spirit of global solidarity must not be lost. At the same time, I would encourage you to keep in mind all those people around us who are trapped in a cycle of poverty. They too need to be given hope. The fight against poverty and hunger must be fought constantly and on many fronts, especially in its cause. I know that many Americans today, as in the past, are working to deal with this problem. It goes without saying that part of this great effort is the creation and distribution of wealth. The right use of natural resources, the proper application of technology, and the harnessing of the spirit of enterprise are essential elements of an economy which seeks to be modern, inclusive, and sustainable. Business is a noble vocation directed to producing wealth and improving the world. It can be a fruitful source of prosperity from the area in which it operates, especially if it sees the creation of jobs as an essential part of its service to the common good. This common good also includes the earth, a central theme of the encyclical, which I recently wrote in order to enter into the dialogue with all people about our common home. We need a conversation which includes everyone, since the environmental challenge we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect us all. In Laudato Si, I call for a courageous and responsible effort to redirect our steps and to avert the most serious effects of the environmental deterioration caused by human activity. I'm convinced that we can make a difference, I'm sure. And I have no doubt that the United States and this Congress have an important role to play. Now is the time for courageous action and strategies aimed at implementing a culture of care and an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the excluded, and at the same time, protecting nature. We have the freedom needed to limit and direct technology, to devise intelligent ways of developing and limiting our power, and to put technology at the service of another type of progress, one which is here, more human, more social, more integral. In this regard, I am confident that America's outstanding academic and research institutions can make a vital contribution in the years ahead. A century ago, at the beginning of the Great War, which Pope Benedict XV termed a pointless slaughter, another notable American was born, the Cistercian monk Thomas Merton. He remains a source of a spiritual inspiration and guide for many people. In his autobiography, Merton wrote, "I came into the world free by nature, in the image of God. I was, nevertheless, the prisoner of my own violence, my own selfishness, in the image of the world into which I was born. That world was the picture of hell, full of men like myself, loving God and yet hating Him, born to love Him, living instead in fear of hopeless self-contradictory hungers." Merton was, above all, a man of prayer, a thinker who challenged the certitudes of this time and opened new horizons for souls and for the Church. He was also a man of dialogue, a promoter of peace between peoples and religions. From this perspective of dialogue, I would like to recognize the efforts made in recent months to help overcome historic differences linked to painful episodes of the past. It is my duty to build bridges and to help all men and women in any way possible to do the same. When countries which have been at odds resume the path of the dialogue, a dialogue which may have been interrupted for the most legitimate of reasons, new opportunities open up for all. This that required and requires courage and daring, which is not the same as irresponsibility. A good political leader is one who, with the interests of all in mind, seizes the moment in a spirit of openness and pragmatism. A good political leader always opts to initiate processes rather than possessing space. Being at the service of dialogue and peace also means being truly determined to minimize and, in the long term, to end the many armed conflicts throughout our world. Here we have to ask ourselves, why are deadly weapons being sold to those who plan to inflict untold suffering on individuals and society? Sadly, the answer, as we all know, is simply for money. Money that is drenched in blood, often innocent blood. In the face of the shameful and culpable silence, it is our duty to confront the problem and to stop the arms stride. Three sons and one daughter of this land, 4 individuals of 4 dreams. Lincoln, liberty. Martin Luther King, liberty in plurality and non-exclusion. Dorothy Day, social justice and the rights of persons. And Thomas Merton, the capacity for dialogue and openness to God. 4 representatives of American people. I will end my visit to your country in Philadelphia, where I will take part in the World Meeting of Families. It is my wish that throughout our visit, the family should be a recurrent theme. How essential the family has been to the building of this country. And how worthy it remains for our support and encouragement. Yet, I cannot hide my concern for the family, which is threatened, perhaps as never before, from within and without. fundamental relations are being called into question, as is the very basis of marriage and the family. I can only reiterate the importance and, above all, the richness and the beauty of family life. In particular, I would like to call attention to those family members who are the most vulnerable, the young. For many of them, a future filled with countless possibilities beckons. Yet so many others seem disoriented and aimless, trapped in a hopeless maze of violence, abuse, and despair. Their problems are our problems. We cannot avoid them. We need to face them together, to talk about them, and to seek effective solutions rather than getting bogged down in discussion. At the risk of oversimplifying, we might say that we live in a culture with precious young people known to start a family because they lack possibilities for the future. Yet, the same culture presents others with so many options that they too are dissuaded from starting a family. A nation can be considered great when it defends liberty, as Lincoln did, when it fosters a culture which enables people to dream of full rights for all brothers and sisters, as Martin Luther King sought to do, when it strives for justice and the cause of the oppressed, as Dorothy Day did by her tireless work, the fruit of a faith which becomes dialogue and sows peace in the contemplative style of Thomas Merton. In this remark, I have sought to present some of the richness of your cultural heritage, of the spirit of the American people. It is my desire that this spirit continue to develop and grow so that as many young people as possible can inherit and dwell in a land which has inspired so many people to dream. God bless America.
And a stirring speech by Pope Francis here in Congress, a historic moment where he talked about the pursuit of the common good and urged lawmakers to put aside political differences. He hit on many issues, including immigration, climate change, gun control, abortion, and death penalty in respect of life. He talked about the evils of capitalism and inequality, and about the migrant crisis that is gripping Europe, the worst since World War II. It was certainly measured in its tone as we heard the pontiff talk about wanting a dialogue with the audience. We are going to see Pope Francis then go to Statuary Hall, and he will pause in front of a statue of Juniper Serra. And that is noteworthy because he is now Saint Sarah and was canonized just yesterday by Pope Francis, the first canonization ever here in the United States. And then we will see Pope Francis and House Speaker John Boehner on the balcony. A special stage has been built for him where he will wave at the huge crowds, the tens of thousands of people who have gathered on the west front of the Capitol, who for the past 40 minutes have been watching this speech, listening to this speech on huge jumbotrons that are all along the wall here in Washington, almost as big, if not bigger, than some presidential inaugurations. My colleagues Gail King and Vanita Nair are in New York. I know the both of you watched this as well. It was an extraordinary address.
It really was, Nora. He touched on many topics that surprised our guest in the studio. We're joined by Professor Canada Moss. She's a professor of theology from the University of Notre Dame in New York, and Monsignor Anthony Figueiredo, who also joins us again at the table. There's a famous line in a movie that says, "You had me at hello." Here for the pontiff, he seemed to have us when he said, "From the land of the home and the free and the brave." He got instant applause on that. What surprised you in this speech?
Rapturous applause. I think he really sees in the United States openness, freedom, and courage. And so he wants that dialogue on some challenging issues. What surprised me, first of all, this emphasis on the dignity of the human person. Of course, that's a very Catholic principle, but the abolition of the death penalty and a clear call to stop the arms trade, wow.
Why did it surprise you that he touched on the death penalty in particular?
It's even been polemical in the Catholic Church, and we know that throughout the world, and even in some states here, that still is a question, that's an issue. But coming from the greatest moral leader in the world today, and before the strongest gathering of political leaders, that is huge.
We have to say that for a man who said English is his least favorite of the 6 languages he spoke, he really did an excellent job, very metered, a slow delivery, and everything he said. As Nora mentioned, he really talked about so many different topics, Canada, but he did it with that lighter touch that he is so often praised for. You were even commenting on how he was able to take religious topics and sort of make them less religious by using time references.
That's right. There's a lot of warmth here, and he does a lot of things that sort of broaden Catholic categories so that they appeal to everyone. One of the key examples of this is the use of the golden rule. He has this quote from Matthew, "Do unto others as you will have done unto yourself." But that's something everyone applauded.
It was our first standing ovation, right?
Yes, it's the first standing ovation.
Some of the biggest applause of the speech. Interesting that it would come from Congress, where it's so acrimonious right now.
Right, but this is the golden rule is the underpinning of every religious group, and humanists agree that this is a good moral principle. He also made this statement that we will be judged by time in the future for what we do. That's the standard by which we will be judged in the future. We will be judged in the future on what we do now. Now, he could have said we will be judged by God, but he didn't, because time and the way that our successors will view us is something that appeals to everyone, and that broadening of the message is very important to him.
And Monsignor, the family was a recurrent theme throughout this speech for him.
It is, and obviously that's the main reason here. He's in the United States, and he really believes, as the Church does, that the family is the basic cell of society. He clearly called us to defend the institution of the family. He clearly called us to defend
life. And here's the
life.
pontiff right now, Pope Francis, entering the hall, where he will meet with John Boehner.
It certainly also seemed like there was a lot about inclusiveness. In the past, he said not just comfort the afflicted, but afflict the comfortable. Nora, we want to go back out to you at D.C. right now as we're watching the Pope make those steps.
That's right. He just passed by the Will Rogers statue. If those who've been in the Capitol know where that is, and he's approaching Statuary Hall, which is an incredible gathering of American and leaders and statues of them. No women inside Statuary Hall, although there has been, except Rosa Parks has just been recently added. But he will pause before Juniper Serra to note this saint that he has just canonized there. And that's significant because they credit Sarah with bringing Catholicism to the West. He has been criticized perhaps for converting some Native Americans. And here we see the pontiff. Have His Holiness headed to the Speaker's balcony, which will probably be the picture on the front page of the newspapers tomorrow. And it's my understanding they have built a special stage for him on top of the Speaker's balcony so that he will even be up a little higher. And he will look out and see the tens of thousands who are gathered on the Mall. And that's where Chip Reed has been all this morning. Good morning, Chip.
Well, good morning. It's very quiet here right now because they are waiting for the Pope to come out on that balcony right up there any minute now. And I have 4 young ladies here who all just recently graduated from college. Was this the best college graduation present you could get, Frida?
Yes, of course, being here with these lovely ladies. So definitely.
And what did you think about that speech?
Oh my goodness. So one thing he said really stuck to me, and he said that the yardstick that you use to judge others is the same that time is going to use to judge you. And it just really stuck with me because the common good and solidarity of everyone and just seeing how they all just cheered when he's talking about love, really, it touched me, and it's just wonderful.
Marisa, what's it like right now waiting for him to come out on that balcony?
Really exciting. I love this feeling of anticipation and unity, kind of, how everyone is really excited for the same thing here.
Lexi, is it the speech or the Pope coming out on the balcony that you're most excited about?
Well, I already heard the speech and it was really great, so I'm also excited for this too. So
Yeah.
it's all exciting.
Taylor, quickly.
Yep, we're really grateful to be here. I'm looking forward to seeing the Pope come out any minute now.
Okay, fantastic. I'll let you all turn around the other way. I know you'd rather do that. So, Nora, very respectful, very quiet here, and I think I'll join them in the silence. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Chip Reed. And of course, the Speaker of the House has one of the most beautiful offices on Capitol Hill and is granted with this gorgeous balcony where you can see the entire mall, the Washington Mall, all the way down to the Lincoln Memorial. So this is an occasion for the pontiff to see a beautiful part of Washington, but also the many that have come and gathered to see him. Nancy Cordes is with me here on Capitol Hill. Nancy, really a remarkable morning here.
It really was, Nora, to see the Pope come here to the home of democracy and essentially lay out his view of the role of government. He said legislative activity is always based on care for the people. And so every issue that he talked about through that lens. He said that we need to open our doors to more immigrants and more refugees. He said they're coming here for a better life for their families. Is this not what we want for our own children? That was a huge applause line. He said we need to protect life at every stage of development. And he talked quite pointedly about his opposition to the death penalty. And then on climate change, which you could tell was really one of the issues he was most passionate about. He said he's convinced that we can make a difference and that Congress has an important role to play. Clearly, there are many members of Congress who would disagree with him there, but he said that we need to make this world better, not just for the people who live here now, but the people who will be living here in the future.
Nancy, I mentioned this. It's my understanding there's been a special stage that has been built on this terrace to elevate the pontiff higher so he can be seen more easily by the crowds, and that there are 2 microphones that are positioned so that he could address the crowd if he wanted to. And we know there's students, teachers, people who've traveled miles and miles to be here today.
And Nora, members that I've spoken to say they do expect him to address this crowd, that it would be very much in keeping with the personality of this Pope to speak to them, to bless them. He knows that these are Americans who have come from all over the country, and perhaps some people who have come from beyond our borders to see him and to hear from him, and who have been waiting many hours for that opportunity.
Nancy, we talked about previously sort of decorum inside the House chamber. In a 50-minute speech, we saw 33 occasions of applause, many of them standing applause.
A lot of applause from both sides. What we didn't see were any boos. I think that leadership will be happy about that. We didn't see anyone lunging out to try to greet the Pope as he walked down the center aisle. Everyone was very respectful. In fact, the only person that he really acknowledged as he was coming down the aisle was the Secretary of State, John Kerry, who is Catholic. He stopped to shake Kerry's hand. He clearly initiated that engagement. And he spoke a lot about courage in his speech as it relates to re-engaging with our traditional enemies. And he looked at Secretary Kerry as he spoke about that.
And we've just seen the Vice President, Joe Biden, the Speaker of the House, as well as other leaders. And now, his Holy Father. Let's listen.
Hello, everyone. Se agradezco su acogida y su presencia.
I'm so grateful for your presence here.
Se agradezco los personajes más importantes que hay aquí, los niños.
The most important ones here, children.
Quiero pedirle a Dios que los bendiga.
I will ask God to bless them.
Señor,
Lord,
Padre nuestro de todos,
Father of all,
bendice a este pueblo.
bless these.
Bendice a cada uno de ellos.
Bless each of them.
Bendice a sus familias.
Bless the families.
Dales lo que más necesitan.
Bless them all.
Y les pido, por favor, a ustedes,
And I ask you all, please,
que recen por mí.
to pray for me.
Y si entre ustedes hay algunos que no creen
And if there are among you any who do not believe
o no pueden rezar,
or cannot pray,
les pido, por favor,
I ask you, please,
que me deseen cosas buenas.
to send good wishes my way.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and God bless America.
Incredible. I've never seen anything like this. The roar of the crowd chanting for Pope Francis, and you heard him saying, God bless America. And you know, I think his message there was what has inspired so many people about him. It was inclusiveness, even taking the opportunity to reach out to those who he said who cannot pray or who do not believe. I ask you to send good wishes my way. He is not just speaking to those of Catholic faith or Christians. He is trying to be, in some ways, an agent of change, a leader of faith, inspirer to many in sort of the ideals, that common good that he talked about today, that golden rule that he talked about here on Capitol Hill. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Clearly an inspiring moment here, Gail.
Nora, we are talking about it in the studio. We all had the same reaction as you when he is so inclusive, Monsignor, and it's so interesting to watch how in his speech he said he wants to touch the elderly, he wants to touch children. His first comment was to the children. So we all see how he's affecting people. How do you think this is affecting him?
He was clearly moved there, Gail, himself, and I think he sees this as a great moment of hope where we can build on common ground, which ultimately is the human person. So let us work together, looking out for the needs of the human person, not doctrine, not dogma, not our own positions, but the other person in front of us and their needs today and into eternity. What a beautiful, beautiful message.
It's so beautiful to hear him say, pray for me as well.
Isn't that humble? You know, he's humble, simple, gentle, and generous.
We're going to go back to you, Nora O'Donnell, in Washington at the Capitol.
That's right, a phrase worth repeating that the Pope used here, saying the yardstick we use for others will be the yardstick which time will use for us. So now Pope Francis will leave here and go to Catholic Charities and have lunch with the homeless and poor before going to New York. Our coverage of Pope Francis' visit to America will continue throughout the day on the CBS station and on our 24-hour digital network, CBSN. There will be complete wrap-up of the Pope's Day on tonight's CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley. Those of you in the West, stay with us for CBS This Morning. This has been a CBS News special report.